Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most famous productivity principles out there, the 80-20 rule. Is it a fact of nature, a work of fiction, or maybe a powerful framework we can all use? Let's find out.
You know that feeling, right? You sit down at your desk, you open up your task list, and it's a mile long. Everything feels urgent, everything feels important. So how in the world do you decide what actually matters? Where do you even start?
It sounds completely backwards, doesn't it? But that's the central promise of this century-old idea. It suggests there's a kind of hidden imbalance in the world, and if we can just understand it, it could change everything about how we work and live.
To really get a handle on this powerful concept, we need to go back to where it all started. Let's take a look at how this famous principle was born from a pretty simple observation. Okay, so here's the core idea. Its official name is the Pareto principle, but you probably know it as the 80-20 rule. It basically says that in a whole lot of situations, the relationship between what you put in and what you get out is really unequal. A small chunk of your efforts, the vital few, end up driving the vast majority of your results. This all kicked off way back in 1896 with an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. He first noticed that about 80% of the land in Italy was owned by just 20% of the people. But then he saw it everywhere, even in his own garden, where 20% of his pea pods were producing 80% of his peas. Fast forward a few decades, and a management guru named Joseph M. Giron grabs the idea, names it the Pareto principle, and starts applying it to business. And from there, it just exploded into the powerhouse concept we know today.
And boy, did it become a powerhouse. A huge part of the rule's appeal is just how universal it seems. Let's take a quick look at all the places you supposedly see it in action.
I mean, you start seeing it cited everywhere. In sales, they say 20% of your clients bring in 80% of your revenue. In software, a tiny fraction of the code is responsible for most of the bugs. And for us, in our day-to-day, a couple of key tasks on that long to-do list are said to deliver most of our actual progress. It's even used for personal finance, pointing out that your biggest savings come from focusing on the big expenses, like housing and transport. Because of this, people have actually turned it into a real practical framework for making decisions. Asana, for example, lays out this 5-step process. You list your problems, figure out what's causing them, group them up, and then, and this is the key part, you assign a value to each one based on its impact. The whole goal is to then focus all of your energy on that top 20% of problems that'll give you 80% of the solution. So it's historic, it's used everywhere, it's super practical. Case closed, right? Well, maybe not. What happens when we actually put this accepted truth under the microscope? This quote from eConsultancy really hits the nail on the head. Some ideas just become true because they get repeated over and over in meetings and presentations, and nobody ever stops to actually check the facts. They sound smart, they're simple to remember, but are they real? So let's put it to the test. Let's take one of the most famous claims of all, that 20% of your customers are driving 80% of your sales. It's the bedrock of so many marketing strategies. But is it actually true? And look, this isn't just a trap for us. Even the experts fall for it. Professor Jan Benedict Steenkamp admits he just accepted the rule for years without really thinking about it. And you can see why. The story is so good, and its origin with a famous economist gives it this air of authority. But when researchers at the super reputable Ehrenberg Bass Institute actually crunched the numbers across tons of different industries, they found something kind of shocking. It turns out that whole 80-20 rule for customers, it's just not true. In the real world, the top 20% of customers actually account for closer to 50% of sales. And that difference is huge. We are not talking about a little rounding error here. The gap between the 80% claim and the 50% reality is massive. And think about it. That has enormous implications for any business that's building its entire strategy around a vital few that might be a lot less vital than they think. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Not only is the average around 50%, but the actual number is all over the place depending on the industry. For dog food, it's pretty high, 68%. closer to the rule, but still not quite there. But for hair conditioner, it drops all the way down to 44%. So the 80-20 rule isn't just wrong, it's not even consistently wrong. Okay, so the numbers themselves are pretty shaky, but there's another, maybe even more common way this whole principle gets misunderstood. And it's all about the difference between effort and impact. This is probably one of the most important clarifications we can make. The rule is not an excuse to be lazy or to work only one day a week. It's not about putting in just 20% of your effort. It's about identifying the most critical 20% of your tasks and then applying all of your effort, 100% of it, to that vital few to get those massive, outsized results. So after all that, where does this leave us? If the numbers aren't really fixed and the application is so often misunderstood, what's the real value here? Well, it seems like the true lesson isn't about a number at all. Really, the 80-20 rule is best seen as a mental model. It's a powerful reminder that life is just imbalanced. Some things will always matter more than others. So the real skill isn't memorizing the numbers, 80 and 20. It's about getting good at spotting that vital few in any situation. Your work, your money, your relationships. And maybe most importantly, it's a reminder to be a little skeptical of any truth that just gets repeated without any proof. At the end of the day, the Pareto Principle's greatest gift isn't some magic ratio. It's a prompt. It's an invitation to just stop for a second, look at what's in front of you, and ask, what really matters here? And you know, that might just be the best principle of all. It's not about finding a simple rule to follow without thinking. It's about building the habit of questioning, of analyzing, and of discovering for yourself what really moves the needle. Staying critical and staying curious. Not a bad rule in itself. Thanks for watching The Explainer.